So welcome to the Photography Kitchen, and this is episode 26, is it? Or is it 25? Oh no, that's the next episode. That's wrong. Somebody screwed up the order on this. Who would have done such a thing? Did I put next episode in here twice? No, there it is. Okay, that's what we are. This is episode 25. And for those of you that are subscribers, this does not count. This is a freebie for everyone. For those of you joining us for the first time, we're going to treat it like a menu, and we're going to start with hors d'oeuvres. And I've got an image that I found interesting. Let me bring it up here. And by the way, we are going to work in both Lightroom and Photoshop tonight. And again, any questions you have, please type them into the chat window. So this is a scene in Sedona, and I found that I think it's a lovely image. It really leads you in. I do love doing verticals of both vertical and horizontal things. Usually when I have something that's vertical, I love putting it in a horizontal format. But this one with this path was just kind of yelling that it had to be a vertical. It also just made this formation biggest in the scene. And we have this dry riverbed leading you up to the scene, but there's a problem. And I've already done the edit. I'm not going to bother doing the edit on this. But the problem is you can't get to it. And I stared at this for a bit and thought, Adobe has been spending all its time touting all the AI stuff. And some of it's useful. A lot of it, frankly, is still kind of nonsense. For a photographer, but especially if you're doing things like landscape photography. If you're photographing people and you want to put a different shirt on them, fine, it's great for that. But that's not what we want to do in landscape photography. There's a however, though. Let's go up to the develop module here. And I thought, wow, this is one that could take advantage of the AI stuff. So I'm going to come up to here. Let's open up the histogram as well. You see the histogram is, it's pretty perfect. But I'm going to go to right here to the generative AI. Oh, I have visualized spots on generative AI, and I thought, you know what? The problem in this image is we have this beautiful shadow down the bottom, and this is important, by the way, compositionally wise, because this shadow forms sort of a base to the image above, so it has this nice weight to it, and we have this lovely path leading up to the subject. But it's blocked because the path is blocked. And the people in the parks frown when you bring your own hedge clippers to take this kind of stuff away. But I thought, oh, wait a second. Maybe this tool will fix the problem. So I'm going to select this area along the path where this brush is in the way, keeping us from really getting to the formation. So that's what it's selected. Let's click on remove and see what the generative AI does. I don't usually use it for this kind of thing, but that was kind of a fail. That's a little better. There's the answer. Look what it just did. It opened up the brush to allow us to get up here. We could even take it one step further. I'm okay with it the way it is. Let's do it one more time, and let's just see if we can get rid of this and to get more rock in there to make it look like there's really a clear path all the way up to the thing. And let's see, there's 1, 2, 3. Actually, two's a little better. All right, so if we take a look, let me create a virtual copy of this, which is Command apostrophe. So here's another copy of it. I'm going to reset that one back. So if we take a look, let's go full screen. There's the before with the path being blocked by the shrubs, and there's the after. And look at the difference in the image. Now you're not only visually, it's not only a visual path. If you were here, this is the path you would walk to get up to this. And notice how by getting rid of it, it leads you into the image so much better. So I don't use a lot of the generative AI stuff, but I think that's pretty cool. All right, so let's get out of there. That's all I wanted to show you on that. ways to use generative AI that can help the composition of an image. All right, let's go on to something plain. And is there an image in here? Is there something we can do with this? I actually took this a couple days ago. What is today? Today's the 4th. I took this on the 30th. And this is an area down the street from me called Pine Island. And these are onion fields that are obviously completely snowed over. But I thought it was kind of an interesting thing. I'm going to make a virtual copy again, Command apostrophe, and let's just do a basic edit on it first. And I know it's driving everybody nuts, so let's fix the straightness. You can do it by eye. You can use the angle tool, which I think will make it easier. So I'll just click and drag across the area that I feel should be horizontally level. So that's good. Yeah, there's more on bottom and top than I need, but I'm not sure how. In fact, as I look at it, even though the level says it's level, to me it seems, and it could be just an optical illusion because of this downslope, and I think these other trees coming in here, I'm going to straighten it out visually instead. So I'm going to hit the R key for the crop tool, come down to the lower left-hand corner, and I'm going to drag it so that it visually looks straight to me. And the key for this stuff is if it looks visually straight to you, even if technically the other way was straight, it's gonna please people more. And I'm sure you've all entered images into a print comp and something wasn't completely straight, and that's all people can see. So whether it was there or not, you gotta fix it. So what's the kind of stuff I would do in Lightroom for this? Well, let's see if we can bring out the snow a little bit. I'm gonna add a little texture, a little clarity, that helps. Let's do a little dehaze. Yeah, it's there. The sky is pretty bad. And there is a new tool in the sky that is very helpful. So let's go ahead and select the sky. We're going to come up to the masking tool up top here and select the sky. All right, there's our sky. First, I'm going to make it a little bluer. I'm going to come down to the temp slider and move it to the blue a little bit. And no, a lot more than I thought it needed. In fact, I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to instead come down to the point color tool, which is this right here, and this is new. This is fine. This tool used to be just as a separate menu. Now you can also access it from within the masking panel. So I'm going to click on the eyedropper, come up to this blue, click on there, and here's the blue, and I'm going to push it over to the right on the hue to make it a little bluer, add some saturation. And luminance, I think that luminance is okay where it is. But you can see there's quite a difference in the blue from the right to left. And another piece that they added to the point color tool is this variance slider. And the variance slider will take that color and it will smooth it out. Watch what happens. If I take it to the right, it'll make it worse. You can see it gets really nasty. But if I take it to the left, look what happens. All of a sudden, that color gets smoothed out. See that? Really nice. And if you had a little bit of polarization on your camera, and actually I think I might have had a polarizer on here, it's an easy way to minimize the effect of that. So that's pretty good. Something else with the masking tools that's very handy. I've shown this before. Let's create another new mask, and I'm going to use a linear gradient because there's really nothing going on in the sky. How can I make it a little more interesting? I'm going to start about halfway up the mountain peak and come up to, well, let's say about there. And again, remember, I'm going to repeat stuff. From the red circle to the black square will be fade from 100% here to 50% for the black square of any slider you do over here. And then it will fade from 50 to 0 up from the black square up to the white dot. But what I want is, I just want the area above the mountain to be selected. And this is a big deal. This was something that was really almost impossible in the past. But now we have the ability to click on the 3 dots in the masking panel and tell it to intersect that mask with the sky. And watch what happens. It's only going to give us the areas that were both the sky and the mask. And that allows you to create really amazing masks very easily. And what I'm going to do is bring the exposure up. And look, by opening that horizon, which is typically what happens anyway, the horizon gets lighter, that boring sky just got a little more interesting. So very good. Also, As I remember it, the woods here for in the landscape part of the image are a little too brown. Let's do another mask. I'm going to click on mask again, and we're going to choose landscape. And let's see what the software tells us it sees as different pieces of this landscape. So sky, okay, that was easy. Mountains, well, that's handy. Okay, so there's sky, mountains, snow, natural ground, that's kind of a weird one. But the one I really want is the mountains. So I'm going to go ahead and click a mask for that, because to me, the mountains just look a little bit too brown, which means there's a lot of yellow in them. That means we need to push the color temperature over to blue. And notice as we do that, I can take some of that yellow out, make it a little more neutral. Is it also maybe a little too magenta? Yeah, let's do that. And while we're here, let's bring that up. Oh, look, we can see through the sticks now to the snow and decide, is it still a little warm? I think so. I'm looking at the snow. I don't want it to have a yellow cast to it. And something like that. And while we're here, let's go ahead and add some little more definition to it. I'm going to scroll down to effects and add some clarity to that and some texture. And as you do that, it makes it a little darker, so I'm going to lighten it up a little bit more. In fact, let's bring up the shadows a bit. Oh, there we go. Now we can see through the thing. Great. So just what we've done so far, we've come from there to there. Okay, great. How else can we make this interesting? The foreground snow, it needs something, and I think we've pretty much hit the limit what we can do with this in Lightroom. I think, yes, we could do more, but I think really the answer is we need to send this thing into Photoshop. So I'm going to hit enter on that and go up to Photo Edit in Photoshop. So let's send this image into Photoshop because there's something cool I want to try. All right, so here's our image in Photoshop. So what are we going to do with this? This is the part that I want to play with. So I'm going to select it all. This is the marquee tool right here. And I'm going to select the entire bottom of the image. We're going to end up not using it all, but let's just select it for now. And I'm going to copy and paste that. And that just had, all that did was it just put a copy of it on its own layer. And what I want to do is I'm going to create a black and white version of this by using a down here, which is called an adjustment layer. We're going to go to black and white. So let's go to black and white, and it'll show the whole image in black and white. And let's see what we can do to add some more pop to the snow in the front. So as we go through these different filters, let's see what infrared. Infrared's kind of interesting. Let's try maximum black. No, that's actually less. A red filter, nope, or neutral density. Red filter's pretty good. Yellow's even darker. And blue should make it lighter. Let's see what blue does, because it is blue, so we just completely lose all the blue in there. Let's go ahead with yellow. All right, so we've got a yellow filter on here. And what I want to do is I'm not going to use it as a black and white. We're going to change the blending mode of this. And to make sure it only happens on this thing, I'm going to command click on that layer icon, and notice it just selects the bottom of the image. And I'm going to go into the mask for the black and white adjustment layer. You can see over here we've got black in the foreground, so hitting Alt backspace will fill that, with that mask. So you can see I just masked out the black and white in the foreground. But that's where I want it. So what I need to do is hit Command I. And by the way, I'm on a Mac, so if I say Command, it's Control on a PC. I hit Command I. Now it's only on the foreground, but there's nothing happening. Whoops, I just did the whole thing. So what I want to do is I have the foreground as a black and white now, but I'm going to change the blending mode from normal to luminosity, which is way down the bottom. So let's do luminosity, and look what it just did. If I turn this on and off, you can see the difference. Basically, it's a luminosity mask is what we just did with that. And you can decide if you like the tone of it or not. That's a personal preference. In fact, we can go ahead and do a color balance adjustment layer here also. And if you're not sure what something needs, this is the greatest tool. You know the color's off, you're not sure why. And that's just start dragging back and forth. Do you want it bluer? Do you want it redder? In this case, maybe just a slight bit of blue. That makes it purple. Now, if any change you make looks terrible, then that means leave it alone. I'll just type in 0 on that. Yellow, blue. Oh, I do like that blue. I think it does need some more blue there. And then we'll do the same thing for highlights and shadows. Nope, that one's, oh yeah, a little cyan. And magenta green. Oh, it needs a little magenta. And yellow blue. That's fine. And then lastly, shadows. Same thing. So this is the tool to go to when you're doing a color fix on an image. You know there's something wrong with it. You just can't nail it down. These sliders will get you there. And then after you're done with that, you can say, all right, that's good. I don't need it at 100%. Let's back off a little bit. So we'll go to the opacity slider, bring it down a little bit. And let's say the same thing here. So there's with and without the black and white made into a luminance layer. We can bring that back as well. Up, we want opacity. Bring that down a smidge, which will just soften it up. Okay, now yes, there's still too much foreground. We don't need it. And the last thing is, you know what, let's face it. I did add the brightness on the horizon above the mountain, but it needs a sky. So we're going to use Photoshop's sky replacement tool. But what I did was I loaded my own skies in. So you got to make sure that you do that. So let me come up to put myself actually on a layer that has an image, not an adjustment layer. And the sky replacement, what do you mean no sky? Oh, I did it on the layer that didn't have the sky, sorry. In fact, what I'm going to do before I go any further, I'm going to do something called creating a stack. I want to go ahead and flatten all this stuff into another layer, but I want to keep them in case I need to get back to them. So if you click on the 3 lines here, this is the layer menu. Click on that, hold down the Alt key, and click on Merge Visible. And what that does is it gives you a flattened version of everything you've got, but you still have your layers intact. So now from this, let's go ahead and go to Edit Sky Replacement, because now it's going to see a sky. There we go. I want a little, let's see, do I want a little more dramatic sky? Let's try this one. Yeah, let's go with that. And I'll just hit OK. Now, there's a couple of things going on with the sky. Actually, the color's pretty darn good. I don't know that I actually want it at 100%. And when Photoshop does a sky replacement, it adds this edge lighting group that I generally don't like. In fact, we turn it off, and look what happens. It's a cleaner. I don't know why. It adds some darkness to the area underneath it. So I'm just going to go pure sky. I'm also going to click on the sky and go to hit Command T, which is Edit Free Transform. So Command T is going to allow me to resize this thing. Now you can see the borders are beyond the screen. And if you ever do that, but you need to see the whole thing, if you hit Command or Control 0, that backs out the image so you can see the entire selection. So I can make this bigger or smaller. Whoops, I just dragged it right out of the image. And you can do things like, let's see, is that lighter? Yeah, actually, you can even flip it horizontally if you decide you want the clouds to go the other way. Okay, so I'll hit enter on that. And I think that sky is a lot better. But also notice that it's exactly the same power from the top to the bottom. And remember before where we did that gradient in here in Lightroom to make this thing lighter, can you do that in Photoshop as well? And the answer is yes. It's a little more complicated because if you look at the filters in Photoshop, or the selections rather, you do have subject and sky, but all of those things like subtract and intersect and add seem to be missing. They've actually been in Photoshop for a long time. And what I'm going to do is select, first I'm going to select the sky out of this image. Oops, I got the whole thing because I had the just the replacement sky. So I'm done with that. So I'm going to select that grouping, and Command E will flatten that thing. So now let's do is select the sky. And how somehow I got it in a group. Okay, select sky. All right, so there's what it calls our sky. I still want to lighten it up. So what I'm going to do is put white in the foreground and do a gradient. But I don't want to just do a gradient over top of this thing. I want it to intersect with the sky. Well, intersect and add and subtract are these little collections of boxes in the upper left. And this one right here is intersect. And watch what happens if I do my gradient. So I hit the G key for my gradient. And you see I've got white to transparent. And watch what happens. If I want it to be straight up and down, I hold down the Shift key. And as I drag up, it does that in there. Now, you don't have as much control, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. In fact, what you really should do is you should do it on another layer. I just wanted to show you it's there. It's actually easier to do this in Lightroom. The same thing goes for the crop. I'm not going to do any cropping or anything else in here. Oh, one thing I will show you, when I've ran out, they have to upgrade to premium to get it forever. But in the past, you were only able to denoise, at least while you're in Lightroom, you could only denoise raw files. However, in Photoshop, there is a new filter in here called AI Denoise right here. And it's actually, for any of you that use Topaz, it's Topaz's Denoise. But once you use it for a certain amount, they say, oh, you got to upgrade if you want to keep this. So the answer is it's easier to just do it in Lightroom with your raw file. So I'm going to hit Command S to save this. This will send it back into Lightroom. You see it's saving up here. And now I'll hit Command Tab to get over to Lightroom. And here is our image in Lightroom. And this is where I like to do the radial masking again like we did before. So let's create a gradient, linear gradient, which is M. And just like we did. And the nice thing also in Lightroom is you can see the damn thing. So I'm going to do that. And once again, click on the three dots and tell it to intersect with the sky. And there we go. And now I can just bring up the exposure of this a little bit. See, you just get to see things as they're happening so much better, and it creates a much more realistic effect. And then the last two things I'll do for this, first of all, is the crop. So let's go to the crop tool up here. Do I want it to fit in a frame? If I do, I can come up to here. And let's say, I don't know what would be appropriate for this, probably like an 11 by 17. Let's try that. And that's still too wide for me. I want something skinnier, maybe a 2:1. That's too skinny. So again, I'm just going to override and get what I think the image needs. Actually, I think about something about like that. Kind of works for me. I like that. And then I will come down to effects. And so we can see what the vignette is. I'm going to bring it all the way over. It's called post-crop vignette. Why is it called that? I'll show you in a sec. It's very round right now. I'm going to make it a little less round. I'm going to push it a little more to the corner, but then I'm going to feather it in a little more at the same time. Then I'm going to back off the amount. Let's see, for this one, since we softened it up a bit, I'm going to go to that -16 or so. And if you look away and look at it again, it looks like nothing happened. But if you click on the eyeball here, it'll hide the effect. And you can see there's the vignette. And it has the effect of keeping you in the image. Now, why is it called a post-crop vignette? All right, I'll show you why. So I'm going to hit Command apostrophe twice. And what that does is going to create virtual copies of that same image. So here's our second one. Well, what if I'm going to print this and I don't feel like spending money for a custom frame? It's got to fit in something I can buy in the store. So I'll come back up to my crop, change the custom to a real frame size. Let's do 11 by 17 is a real frame size. And then maybe bring this in a little bit and frame it a little bit differently. But what just happened, and I don't like this as well, but it's cheaper. What just happened is the crop moves with the vignette rather moves with the crop. And you can see as I turn it on and off, it followed the new shape. And I could do something extreme let's do a real extreme. Let's do a 3-to-1. Why a 3-to-1? A 3-to-1 because it's actually a standard frame in both Michaels and Hobby Lobby. That's actually a standard frame size. And actually, you know what? That's kind of cool. But once again, notice the crop has moved with, I mean, the vignette, I keep saying crop. The vignette has moved with the crop. That's why it's called a post-crop vignette. So if we go to full screen here, we go from here to here to here. That's actually kind of cool, 3-to-1. Back to our original, and if you look, we went from there to there. Certainly a much more interesting take of this scene. And for a little bit of trivia for you non-New Yorkers, I live in southern New York State. This is an area called Pine Island. It's right down the street from where I live. And a large percentage of the U.S. Vidalia onion crop is grown right here. And that's what these fields are. All right, it's time for soup. We've gotten past our hors d'oeuvres. We got a lot of hors d'oeuvres tonight. Let's move on to soup, because we've already been here a half an hour. I got a lot of stuff to do. So I'm hoping some of you guys can stay a little late, because I don't think we're going to finish by 8:30. Let's go on to our soup. And for our soup, some of you may have seen this image before. We're going to do something new to it. This is a place called Lago de Braias in the Dolomites. It's about 12 miles or so from the Austrian border. So even though it's in Italy, everybody here actually speaks German. So I'm going to, again, create a virtual copy, Command apostrophe, so we can have a way to get back to our original image. And when I went, I had seen pictures of this place, and the water is supernaturally turquoise. And I thought that was just, you know, somebody playing with Photoshop or Lightroom to do it. And we get there and you walk around this hotel that's on the lake, you walk around the corner, and wow, it really is turquoise. So this raw file is a terrible depiction of what the place really looks like. So let's do the basics first. First, is there anything that needs to be gotten rid of in this case? I'm going to say no. Because if you're going to do generative removal stuff, you should do it before you do any of your heavy edits. Because if you start doing all kinds of color changes, the generative stuff is going to dig through that and put it back to the original way. So do that first. Most of the stuff you do in Lightroom, the order that you do it is not important, but generative remove is one that is. So what's wrong? All right, we look at the histogram, it's beautiful. Let's bring up the shadows. I'll bring down the highlights a little bit. I'm going to come down to presence. Texture is very fine detail sharpening. Clarity is mid-tone sharpening. And dehaze is shadow sharpening. And you can see if I bring that over, it brings things way dark. And you can see as I do that, look at the sky. All right, well, that's what I'm after, but I don't want to do it to the entire image. In fact, I'm going to want to bring up the shadows on these peaks more. In fact, really the whole bottom of the image. So let's start doing our masking. Oh, while we're at it, let's add some vibrance and saturation, because now we're starting to get to the color of what the lake really is. So let's go ahead and we'll work from the top down. Let's go to the sky. So I'm going to click on the sky. And as I saw before, as you just saw, we're going to scroll down to dehaze and cut to the chase, because there were dramatic clouds out. And I think that looks a heck of a lot better. It's a very neutral look. In fact, as I look at it, yeah, I'm thinking that's actually pretty good. But what I can do while I'm here is to click on the 3 dots by the mask and tell it to duplicate and invert the mask. Give me everything but the sky, because that's too dark. And that's one of the problems with our cameras. In fact, that's why we're here tonight, because our cameras can't see the way we do. Our eyes fix this. Our cameras don't. And I had to expose for the sky because I wanted to make sure I had all this detail. By the way, when I did the invert, look up in here. It actually looks like it picked up a little bit of the sky as well. So before I go any further, while I'm in this panel, I'm going to scroll down and click on subtract and tell it to select the sky. And notice it just got rid of that stuff. Did you guys see that? Let me undo that so you can see it again. You can see the little bit. Let me zoom in. Let's go 50%. So you can see the little bit of bleed over in the selection where it went up into the sky. Well, I don't want to have to manually go in and fix that. All you have to do is hit subtract, select sky, and voila, it's gone. All right, so back to our fit. Let's go ahead and scroll up and bring up the exposure. That's looking better. The temperature is way off on this too. Let's go ahead and add more saturation, and also it needs to be warmer. Look at that, because whenever you're in a place, you need to stare at the stuff. And in this case, those rocks were too cool. The sun was hitting here, and it was much more saturated. As we've done that, however, now the color of the water maybe got a little too green, actually. So let's use a gradient. So I'm going to use M, our gradient tool. And if I want a hard edge, what I can do is do it the opposite. Normally I'd come up from the bottom up and let it fade in. I can also go backwards. Then I'm going to have to do the math. I'll show you know what? I'm going to show you this, but I don't like it. This is something I don't like about how Lightroom handles this. If I wanted to subtract all this stuff above, I have to go into the landscape. Like, for example, I go to subtract. I'd have to go to select landscape and tell it which ones of the landscape thing I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of the sky and the mountains, and then create that mask, and then it subtracts it. To me, that is a really awkward way of doing that. So sometimes it's easier to just do it from the bottom up. So I mentioned it looked a little too green to me. It should be a little bluer, maybe a little yellow. No, not yellower. It should be green, bluer. I'm going to bring the exposure up a little bit, and it was a lot more saturated than this. It was something, oh, maybe even like that. And as I'm looking at this, I'm not thrilled with that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go way 12%, because what I need to do is take this gradient and bring it way down to like there. And now we'll hit fit. All right, that's looking a little bit better. That's kind of how I remember it. And it didn't affect the boats in any way. That's a problem. We could also add some clarity into the water here. I'll decide later if I want to fix it. In fact, if I did want to fix it, let's just do it now. I'm going to come to the color mixer box, get the eyedropper, and come over that green. And that will show you where it is. And if I decided, gee, it was a little more turquoise, I can just push that over to the turquoise. And that may look unnatural to you, but I promise you, if you go there, that's how it looks. That said, I don't want it to look fake. I don't want it to be, this is not what I want the viewer to look at. I want you looking at more at the boats leading up to the mountain. So I'm actually going to desaturate the whole thing a little bit. Even though it is crazy saturated in real life, I'm going to turn it down. And we're going to accentuate it a little bit differently. So now we've got the colors in much better shape. In fact, there's our original raw file. Here's where we are now. Now we need to do some shaping in it. So to do that, we're going to use a brush. And of course, in Lightroom, brush is the letter K. Makes no sense. And I want to add some more shaping into the mountains. And how do I do that? Well, the places that are dark, I might darken them a little bit more. The places that are medium dark, they're the ones that really need it. So I'm going to click on Auto Mask right here. And I'm going to select the top here. Oops, I still have I'm working on the last mask. We're going to start again. So I can just cut to the chase and hit K, and that just brings me right back. So I'm going to do up there. I think up here as well. Excuse me. Because what I want to do is help the viewer get to where I want them to go, which is mostly going to be in the center here. Actually, I think the rest of these spots are dark enough. So let's bring the darkness down in that. Oh, look how that adds dimension to it already. Love it. All right, I mentioned this is where the sun's actually hitting everything. So let's hit K again. Auto Mask is still on. And I'm going to just walk around here and click in these areas that are getting hit by the sun that are more yellow. So scroll down till we get to the color sliders, and let's just push this over to the yellow more, and look at how that comes alive now. Great. What else do I want to do for this? Well, whenever you're dealing with a vertical image like this, you have to decide, do you need something more of an uplift that's forcing the viewer to come from the bottom to the top? And in this case, it does need that. Now, first of all, I'm going to cheat slightly because I want to create more of an uplift. And I could have accomplished this by stepping back a bunch further and taking the shot or using a different lens. But I'm going to do it in Lightroom instead. We're going to use the transform panel. And a lot of people ignore this panel, but I prefer to use it as if thinking, gee, if I had a view camera and needed to change perspective, this is where I could do it. And I'm going to come up to the aspect ratio here and watch what happens. As I push it to the right, it makes it taller and thinner. And that's the motion that I want to create for this image. That looks so much better. Now, while I'm here, I've got a Y offset, which will bring it up and down. If I decide I want, now if I wanted all of it, I can just scale it back. And then X will move it left and right, which in this case is unnecessary. And then I can hit constrain crop, which will just crop it. I often don't like to do that though. I'm going to undo that because I like to do my crop manual after this. In fact, I'm going to scale it back so that we see the entire bit. Let's scale that back and then I'll bring it, whoops, wrong one, and bring the Y offset up. So I get to see the whole image. Yeah, that's better. So now I'll hit the crop tool and I'm going to make sure that the original thing, the little lock there, is unclicked. And let's come over from the left and let's come over from the right and decide if that's perfect. You know, to me, there's a little bit too much lake. So just a little bit. I don't care about fitting in a specific frame. This is purely a crop to what I think the image needs. In fact, as I do this, I'm going to crop it in a little bit more. And the reason for that is, notice this mountain peak range up here, how it's going up to the corner. Now, if that were to go actually exactly into the corner, it would pull you out of the image. I'm going to give it a little bit push down, a little bit more, just to make sure that that corner is not leading you out of the image. So I'm going to hit enter on that. And that's looking pretty good. It needs our vignette. So let's come down again to effects. Let's go to vignette. Let's see how much we need to add. Let's see, I think about right there. And I think that's looking pretty good. Let's go to full screen and I'll bounce back over to our original raw file. There's the raw file we started with. And honestly, the exposure on this is perfect. Why? Because one, the whites of the snow did not get clipped, and two, all of the details in the clouds were maintained. I knew this was going to go dark, but I did not care because as you just see, what we did was we turned that into that. And look how much more motion adding that little bit of thinning creates from the bottom up. And love it. To me, that looks pretty darn cool. If I like to sit and stare at it, then I'm happy with it. The one thing, and again, some of you were with me on this trip, am I completely thrilled with the turquoise of the water? I'm not sure. It looks slightly off, but I can't figure out what it needs. So what do? Command or Control E, which is the keyboard shortcut to send this into Photoshop. And that color balance adjustment layer that I showed you before is really going to be the answer. So let's see. Where's there? Okay, here we are in Photoshop. So I'm just going to, I don't have to make any copy of the background because we're not actually going to touch the image. Let's just go to the half white, half black circle and go to color balance. And all I care about is down the bottom here. So let's bring that up. And here's a quick way, if you're not sure what it needs, add a whole bunch of red and add a whole bunch of cyan. And in this case, they both look terrible, but actually I think the red looks a little less terrible. So that usually means it needs to head that direction. So I'm going to just add a little bit of red about there. Same thing, magenta, add a bunch, green, magenta, green. Actually, it needs a little magenta. Yellow, blue, yellow, blue. It needs a little blue. Now let's do this, and we're going to do the same thing for highlights and shadows. Highlights, red, no. Cyan, yes. It actually needed a different color in the highlights. Magenta, green, needs a little magenta. And by the way, when you're doing this, you're making your decisions on what's the correct color by looking at your monitor. if your monitor's not calibrated, this is a waste of time. That if you're going to have a print done, because you have no idea what it's going to look like. So this is a calibrated monitor I'm working on. So blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow. I don't see an improvement on either. So if that's the case, it generally means it doesn't need anything on that particular slider. And then lastly, shadows, red, no, cyan, little bit. Good green, magenta, green, magenta. Yeah, let's put a little magenta in again, just a little bit. And then yellow, blue, maybe a very little bit of blue. And then we can turn this on and off and look at the difference. It's a very subtle shift, but to me that is the color. Now, however, it affects the rest of the image. So how do I fix that? Well, that's easy. In Photoshop, I'm just going to get the marquee tool, select the entire top of the image. Every time you do an adjustment layer, it comes up with a blank mask. I'm going to select that mask. I want to block that out, so I put black in the foreground by clicking over here, and Option or Alt Delete, and it masks that out. So I can now deselect that. So now we see that that effect is only happening on the bottom, and that's the color. That's what I needed. And that's the answer. So when you have a color that's just not quite right, that color balance trick with those different sliders, it's what's going to allow you to fix it. Now, to me, that looks perfect. So Command S. And how do I know it looks perfect? Well, whenever I go somewhere, and again, you guys have been on trips with me know this, I always tell you, stare at the place. Stare at the things and kind of burn in your memory what it looked like. So when you come back to do your editing, you'll be there. And there we go. So here's the before, and just take a look at the water. Look down here, and here's the one we just did. And it's a subtle change, but it looks so much better. Any questions?
Change it to black.
Okay. Yes, good question. So under your vignette, as I drag it to the left, you see it start getting darker. That's a negative vignette. If you push it beyond the midpoint, you get a white. But if you're going to make vignettes like this in your picture, then that's only for people that have tea cozies around their house and too many cats. So our vignettes for photographic purposes, and the purpose of this is to recenter the viewer into the image. By putting that slight darkening around the edge, it forms a subliminal block to keep you from leaving the image. That's what it's there for. Well, yeah, that's a good question. Will a cell phone shot help you record the true color? That's a really good point. And when I'm at a location that has so many different colors in it, I will sometimes do that. I will take a picture with my cell phone. Now, keep in mind that your phone is way over processing. They're not clean when they do their processing. They're always oversaturated. They do fix your highlights and shadows for you automatically. I do find it as a nice reference sometimes for what I want to do with the image. I don't like most of the times I don't like the way cell phone shots look of landscapes, but there are exceptions. And in something like that, that would be a great use for it because it will do a lot of the things we did. But the result you're going to get from your raw file in the end is going to be better, but you just have to work for it more. But yes, that's a good idea. Appetizers. What do we got for an appetizer? Okay. This is a cool spot. This is in Arches National Park. And there's a walk that goes from the top of the hill around the corner, a place called, what the heck's this place called? Wall Street? Yeah. There's a mile-long trail that comes down to here, and there's a formation called the Three Sisters that's off to the right here. But I love this formation. The problem is, and this is a big problem with our cameras, and our eyes fix this, but our cameras do not. There are multiple color temperatures in this shot, at least 4. In the shadows, in the reflections on the rocks, in the skies, in the brush. So this, even though the histogram is fine, this image needs a lot of work. So Command apostrophe. Again, that's just to create a virtual copy so that we have original we can go back to. So let's go ahead and do the basics. Now, this is the camera natural setting. We could try adaptive color and see what Lightroom does. All right, it helps a little bit. Not a lot, and you could ask for more. Let's bring it up and see what it does. And the answer is not much. So in this case, it really didn't do anything for us. I could also pick one of my own profiles. I also have profiles here that were made for the camera, which is the Color Checker Passport, which will give you the best color rendition, but again, it can only record one color temperature. So let's just leave it there, and we're just going to have to go through the process. Shadow-wise, the shadows are kind of dark. Let's just cut to the chase and bring those up. I'm going to bring them up all the way, and I'm going to bring the highlights down. And those two sliders going out to either extreme give us a lot of latitude with editing the image. Exposure-wise, everything at this point is good. Does anything need to be getting rid of? No. So let's start with the sky. So we'll come up to here, hit the sky, and the sky mostly needs some saturation and a fix on the blue. So let's add some saturation. Actually, that's pretty darn good. Maybe a little bit of magenta in it, because this is a desert, which means there's more red in the sky than there is if you're in a wet place. So that's pretty good. But when we do this again, the sky down at the horizon is too dark. We're going to have to fix that. Let's just do it right now while we're here. So I'm going to hit another Create New Mask. And by the way, once you learn these keyboard shortcuts over here, you won't ever have to do that again. You can, if you learn K as brush, and the people at Adobe went through a lot of trouble to make sure none of their keyboard shortcuts had anything to do with the tool. In Photoshop, they all match. In Lightroom, none of them match. So we've got brush, which is K, of course, linear gradient, and radial gradient. So M is what we're after. Again, this time I'm going to angle it up to follow the image. And then again, we're going to use the intersect command. So under the three dots, intersect it with the sky. And we'll get that beautiful glow above the horizon. Let's just bring it up a little bit, and look what it does. Look how it looks so much better. So that is great. And again, while we're here, after this, we need to come down below. So let's just say, all right, duplicate and invert it and give us what the, oh, I'm sorry, that was my bad. I should have had sky selected. So if I select the sky and then do, whoops, sky and duplicate and invert. Now I'll get the foreground. Okay, color temperature wise, does it meet? All right, I'm looking at the main rock up here. It's a fairly warm color, so let's add yellow. Let's add some magenta. Yeah, that's the way the color I remember this rocks back here. Also, the shadows have gotten too light. We've lost contrast in there. But what we're going to do, rather than add contrast, is we're going to make the blacks darker. And look what that does. It'll make those deep shadows. We can add some contrast into it as well. And as we do that, let's bring the exposure up. And again, as I do this, I'm only looking here, because the image down here is a mess. It's the color temperature is completely wrong. So let's fix that. So I'm just going to hit the M key and watch what happens. It just gives us the crosshair, which is for the linear gradient again. And this time I'm going to come up from the bottom. And remember, from this black square to the white circle, it fades from 50 to 0, 50% to 0. The color temperature at our feet is very different here. And this is why you got to pay attention while you're here. Watch what happens when we bring this to the blue. And look, those rocks should be neutral in here. They're not that warm. And also they're too dark. And that's what this place looks like. That looks so much better. Let's see. It's still a little magenta. I'm seeing a little magenta in the gray here. And again, you got to have a calibrated monitor to see this. I'm going to bring this over to the green. And look what it does. It neutralizes it. It's not adding green to it. It's just cutting out magenta, because it's the opposite of magenta. So while I'm in here, I'm also going to add some texture and clarity so that it pulls out all the little details in here. And that's looking pretty amazing. So I'll hit enter on that. Now I'm going to get a brush. I want to bring out the bushes a little bit. So I'm just going to hit the letter K, and that gives me a brush. Again, we have Auto Mask turned on. For those of you not familiar with Auto Mask, if I turn off Auto Mask, the brush is going to paint however big I have that circle. So if I click in here, not only does it get the tree, but it gets all the area around it. That's not what I want. I just want it to select the tree. By choosing Auto Mask, it's got to match what's underneath the crosshair, and I can click in there, and it actually picked up the green out in the background, which is actually fine. So anything that I think should be green, these bushes out here, and again, remember, this is fading out as well. And if you picked something out you really don't want to touch, you can hold down the Alt key. Notice it turns it to a minus. So if I decide I don't want you to do anything up there, I don't want you to do anything here, I don't want you to touch this shadow or this shadow here. So let's say those are the areas that I don't want touched. Now if I come down to my colors, how do I make something greener? Well, first I wanted a cooler green, so I'm going to add some blue to it. I'm going to add a little bit of green to it. I'm going to increase the saturation and then bring up the exposure a little bit just to add some life. And as I do that, I see it needs some more saturation. Awesome. What next? All right, again, we've got a physical path to the object like we did with our first image that we saw. You can see if you were here and you wanted to get up to this formation, here's a path for you to walk. And that's great. We don't want people to wander off the image. We want them to hang out a bit. And as you come over here, there's a, oh, you can leave here. Oh, you can leave there. On the right-hand side, we're safe because we have shrubs stopping you from going there, although there's this one little thing here. So that's what we're going to fix. I'm going to hit K. This case, let's see, I'm going to turn off Auto Mask because I just kind of want to get areas. I'll make the brush a little smaller. I want that. I want this area here. I want this area here. I want those to be a little bit darker. In fact, come down here as well. I'm just going to be subtle, just going to bring the exposure down a little bit. And notice when I do that, it takes away visual interest. Now, conversely, I'm going to hit K again. I'm going to get a nice big brush and come to the bottom right and do a big line all the way up to the bottom of the formation. And I'm going to add a little exposure. Look at that, just adding a little bit. And if you're not sure how much, look away, look over at the menu, and when you can see it changing out of the corner of your eye, you got it. And as I do that, I'm going to darken the blacks again, maybe make the shadows a little darker. I just want to bring up, again, this is subliminal. Now, as I've done this, I'm going to hit K again. I'm going to turn Auto Mask back on. I want to, again, accentuate this formation. So we're going to pick the bright parts of it that are already bright, a little up on the top, and these sides here. And we're going to bring this up. Let's bring up the exposure a little bit. Oh, look at that. Now it's coming to life. And it's the star of the show now. So we hit enter. All right, and you might think that you're done here. In fact, there's our raw file that we started with. Look what we've done to that. That is beautiful. But wait, there's more. Now, if you had a view camera, you guys, I don't know if you guys know what view cameras are. You know, the things with the bellows where you could move the plates front and back. That changes perspective. And if I had gotten down on my derriere, right where I took this picture, and pointed up, what would happen? Well, this stuff would be flatter, but if I pointed upwards and put on a little bit longer lens, this thing would get bigger. But I didn't. But I don't have to worry about it. Do I have to leave it this way? There's two ways to do this. In fact, I'm going to leave this one the way it is. I'm going to hit a virtual copy to mess with the new one. Let's go to our transform again and to the aspect ratio. And let's make this thing a little bit taller. Now this looks better, but do I like the foreground as much? Because we went from there to there. You know, I like the rock, but I like the flat foreground better. So how can we have the best of both worlds? Well, you can't in Lightroom. We got to send this thing into Photoshop. So Command or Control E sends this image into Photoshop, and here it is. And I'm not sure how much of the sky I want, so I'm going to hit C for crop. Of course, in Photoshop, all the shortcuts match. However, Photoshop has the ability to not just crop, but to uncrop, to actually expand an area. So I'm going to bring the crop up and not hit, I'm just going to hit enter on that. And what that did was gave me more room up here. So what we're going to do is use the marquee tool again. And I'm going to select this whole top, let's see, down to about there. And we're going to use that free transform tool again, which is Command T. Hold down the Shift key so it only goes in one direction. And this is going to allow me to stretch just the top of the image. And that looks awesome. A little more sky than we need, but that's okay. We'll do it again. Save your cropping, your final cropping and vignetting for Lightroom. So I'll hit Command S. That will send this image back into Lightroom. You tab over to Lightroom, and it's trying to come in. We'll give it a sec. You can see it's trying to draw it down here. Come on, catch up, because that's our last one. And actually, was that it? Yeah, that is it. Okay, no, that's not it. PSD 1, 2. No, I guess that's it. That is it. So I'm going to hit the crop tool. I decided there's a little too much sky. I don't want the sky to become the subject. I want the subject to become the subject. And like we did before, I'm going to crop a little bit. Just going to crop in. I'm going to leave the right-hand side because I don't want to crop any of that piece of shrub off. And then hit our vignette. And let's add a little vignette into that. And that is beautiful. And again, let's go to full screen with our raw file. There's the raw file we started with. A great raw file. Raw files should look terrible because they're just the raw materials with all the data, but we turned that into that. And that just looks beautiful. I've been to this is Arches National Park. I've been here bunches of times. Actually, I took this the last trip, and I've been going here for, geez, I don't know, 12 years or so, usually once a year. And every time I go there, I see something new. It's a wonderful place. There we go. Holy cow, it's 8:30. I gotta at least get the main course in. So for those of you guys that are here, this happens all the time. These are scheduled for an hour. Marlene, you've been here. How many times do we actually finish in an hour?
Never.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of you guys know I'm into trains. And you think, all right, well, I'm not into trains. Well, I don't care if you're into trains or not because this can apply to anything. So let's take a look. What are the problems? Again, the histogram is perfect. Look, the histogram up here. The train is dark, but we had these great clouds going on up here. Here's, however, though, there's some ugly stuff back here. Like this thing and this truck over here. So before we do anything else, we're going to get rid of those. So we're going to use the generative AI for this. We're going to use this tool with generative AI chosen. And let's go ahead and select back here and get this whatever with the pickup truck. And let's just get all that style. Let's get the cone while we're at it. And let's see how good a job Lightroom's generative AI removal tool can get rid of that. All right, let's click on remove and see what it does. And come on, how amazing is that? And we can try the different versions of it. 3 looks pretty good, although it left the oh, I guess I didn't cover over the mask when it did its mask creation. I think I like 2 best, although that thing's got to go. But I have more stuff to do, so I want to get rid of this thing. So let's get rid of that, which it created. Let's get rid of that, and we're going to also click on add and get rid of this thing, that orange thing. So let's hit remove for those 2, because I like the tree that it put back in there, but I got rid of the car and that other thing. And that's beautiful. That I love it. We're done. In fact, let me create a virtual copy. Again, I'm going to reset this one. So now you can see, we can zoom in. Let's go to 50% on this thing. Just so you can see this area back here. Look what it did for that. That's pretty amazing. So that I'm not that big into AI for my landscape stuff, but something like that, yes. And I know some of you are asking, oh, but Joe, I don't like all the power lines. You are thinking that, right? All right, stay tuned. We will deal with them. All right, so we've got that. Now we can start to do our basic edits. So let's just cut through the chase. We're just going to go to the sky. What does the sky need? It needs dehaze. So let's go cut to the chase and do that. When we do the sky, though, with the dehaze, it gets very blue. However, that's easily fixed. So while we're here, let's bring down the highlights of the sky, because I want kind of a more dramatic sky. And I'm looking at this clouds here. What's the opposite of blue? Well, yellow. Let's add some yellow into that. But when we do that, oh, it starts to make the clouds too yellow. So the answer really is, I want gray clouds. I'm just going to bring down the saturation. That's all. In fact, while we're at it, I'm going to bring down the overall exposure, increase the contrast. Like threatening storm or a storm just passed. Okay, good. Now, this foreground, color's all wrong. So let's use a gradient. So I hit the M key, and I'm going to select all of that, but we got some of the train. So we're going to click on Subtract and see if Lightroom can determine that the engine is the subject, and look at that. No problem. So it needs some warmth. So let's add, this is gravel down here. Let's do that. We'll add some saturation to it. It's gravelly, so let's add some clarity and some dehaze and some texture. It's a little too yellow for my liking. It needs something else. Does it need magenta or does it need green? Magenta? Well, maybe it actually needed magenta, not yellow. Yeah, that looks better. Let's go something like that. Good. Good, enter. Now we've got the subject itself. So let's click the new mask and let's deal with the train itself. And it's too dark. So let's bring up the exposure on that. Let's open up the shadows and let's put some life back into the color. Add a bunch of saturation, and that's closer to what the train looked like. Now, normally, I mean, a couple years ago, you would have been completely happy with that, because actually you would have been amazed with that removal there, because we got from there to there. The problem is, I shot it at this angle because of the background. When I tried to move around and get more of the train, it really put a really ugly background into it. Can that be fixed? And you're going to be amazed at what you can do with this. Because I'm going to hit enter to get us out of the masks, and we're going to go to transform. And now we're going to really play view camera, because we're going to use the horizontal transform, which is great when you need to accentuate the size and the angle of something. Watch what happens when we drag this. Look at that. Look what we can do with this. I can make the train as if I had walked around to another part of it. That is awesome. Now, it got rid of some of the stuff because of the angle. That's okay. I'm going to back off on the scale because I want to see the background. But that's pretty cool. This, however, it did a beautiful job on the side of the train. On the front of the train, it's gotten a little bit too broad. And we're missing all this stuff up here. So what are we going to do? We're going to send it into Photoshop. So photo edit in Photoshop, there it is, Command E. Command or Control E, you will learn that. Okay, so here's our image in Photoshop. And how do we fix this? First of all, let's add the sky back in. First, I'm going to crop it, this little left-hand side. Let's just do that. I'm going to hit enter on that. Now we have this big empty area, and as great as Lightroom is, it cannot fill in an empty area. If you want to do that, you need Photoshop. So I'm going to use the magic wand to select it, and I want to do them one at a time. In fact, I'm going to make a copy of the background before I do that, which is just Command or Control J. So I get the magic wand. I have contiguous on because I only want to select this part, not the bottom. So I click on there, and there's one other thing we need to do. We need to expand this selection, because if I just fix it with this, you're going to get a little white border on this. So here's what you do. You go to Select, Modify, Expand. That'll expand the selection. I typically do 3 to 5 pixels, so just that. Now, you would think generative AI would be an answer here. The problem is it's not, because the generative AI is limited by resolution. And if I were to fill this almost the entire width of this image, it's going to be much lower resolution. You're limited to 1024 pixels in Photoshop still. But remember our old friend under fill, content aware. That's a fairly simple thing to ask for, just some clouds. It made a weird thing up in the top center, but that's easily fixed because we just deselect that. And now we'll get the lasso tool. Now that we can use generative fill for, because that's only a little bit. That'll be fine matching resolution wise. So let's see what it comes up with that. I don't need all the sky anyway, but I just wanted to have the ability to get a better crop out of this thing. Almost done. Come on. Yeah, that fixed it lovely. All right, now we have to do the same thing for the bottom. Again, W for the magic wand. Select the bottom. Select Modify Expand. 3 pixels. And there's a keyboard shortcut, which is Shift F5. I can just hit that. Oops, I have to be actually on a layer. If you try something and nothing happens, if you look, you're on the wrong layer. So again, Shift F5 or Function Shift F5 depending on your keyboard. And actually that's perfect. Perfect, love it. We're going to crop this. Now I had mentioned that the front of the engine got too broad. So how do we fix that? I think we're just going to do the easy way. Let's get a magic wand, or the marquee tool rather. However, before I do that, I'm going to bring up the rulers, which is Command or Control R, and notice they show up on top and bottom. If you click on the ruler and drag over, it'll give you a line. So I want to take this right to there, because under View, you see Guides, or you see Snap to Guides, and that's what I want. So I'm going to select the entire left of the image, and as I get close to the guide, it snaps to it. So I know it's going to go exactly there. Excuse me. So we're going to use Command T again that we used before. And again, you have to hold down Shift to make it go in just one direction. And look at that. We can get the front of the train back to where it needed. And I'd say that's about right. So good. All right, so we can deselect that. We have stuff we don't need. I could crop here. We'll do a basic crop here. I'll get rid of the stuff on the left. Do I need all that foreground? No, but again, I prefer to do my final crop in Lightroom because I might want to expand this whole thing. In fact, let's do that. Let's try something else. I'm going to hit the crop tool again and decide, you know what? I want a little more to the right of the locomotive, and I want a little more to the left. Yeah, I want the image about like there. I'm going to end up cropping some of the foreground. So I'm going to hit enter on that. This time, I'm going to get the marquee tool again, and I'm going to select the right side, Command T again, hold down Shift, and I'm going to spread out that a little bit. And then the same thing over here, come right up to just about the engine. And again, Command T, hold down Shift, and drag that over a little bit there. Okay, that'll give me more room to play. Now I don't need the rest of this stuff, so what I can do is on the image layer I was working on, which is this one, Command or Control click on the icon. Oh, that's not the image. Sorry. And go to Image, Crop. Rather than bring up the crop tool, it'll just do it exactly for us. Now we got a couple little holes here. That's fine because we're gonna crop it anyway. So Command S to send this back into Lightroom. You see it saving down there, so we can tab over to Lightroom. And here's our new image. Let's hit the crop tool and let's bring that up. I don't need all that bottom. Oh, I forgot to do something. I forgot to do the one thing that you really wanted me to do. Oh, I'm just going to send this back into Lightroom. We'll go ahead and do the crop and send it back. I mean, into Photoshop. Forgot something. We forgot something to do something in this image. I don't need all this other stuff right now, so I'm just going to click on the bar and tell it to flatten the image. Okay, and again, I'm going to make a copy of that, Command J, because there's a tool right up here. See these two right here? These have some interesting abilities. And in this one, it has something called find distractions. In fact, actually the guide's a distraction. Let me clear that. Find distractions. And look, wires and cables is one of them. Let's click on remove and see how good Photoshop is at finding all of those little wires going across the back of the image. Et voila. Come on, are you amazed? If you haven't seen that before, come on, you got to be amazed. And while we're here, let's zoom in. I don't want the remainders of these poles, so I'm going to use the lasso tool, which is this thing right here. So I'm just going to lasso around this thing. Get rid of that. It left a little bit of that light post. And if you remember our Shift F5 for content aware, no reason to use generative AI on that. That's gone. And if, by the way, when you're using this tool, if you hold down the Alt while you do it, it draws straight lines. So let's get rid of this post since it now has nothing attached to it. And again, Shift F5 or Function Shift F5, depending on your keyboard. Et voila, that's gone. And look at that. Look what it just did. I can't see your faces, so I don't see you all like dropping your jaws, but that you should, because that's amazing stuff. And I've been teaching Photoshop, scarily to say, since 1994 when it came out. And I'm still amazed by what the thing can do. All right, so here, look, notice all the wires are gone. Let's hit our crop tool and figure out what we really want to crop this thing to. I'm thinking something about like that. And as I look at it, is there anything else? You know what? I think I want the area surrounding the locomotive to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go up to our masks again, choose the subject, which will be the train, and I want everything but that. So I can click on here and tell it invert that mask. And let's bring the whole area behind it down a little bit. Let's make it a little darker, a little contrasty. Bring the highlights down a smidge. Yeah, because it was kind of a stormy day. I kind of couldn't decide exactly what it wanted to be. And color temperature-wise, it still seems off to me. Let's see, do we make it bluer? No. Do we make it yellower? No. Do we make it greener? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Actually, I'm going to take color out of it. I'm going to desaturate it and make the thing grayer and a little more dark. Let's make it a little darker and make the blacks a little darker. And while I'm at it, actually I'm going to bring the shadows up. I want to get the rails up a little bit. And while I'm at it, I'm going to duplicate and invert this mask again, which will give me the subject, the train. And let's bring that up a little bit. Add a little contrast. I'll bring the blacks back in. Make it look like it was just got a paint job. And then our vignette. We'll scroll down to effects. Let's add our vignette to this. And I don't know if you're in the train. Actually, you know what? A little less sky. A little bit less. I want the engine to be powerful in this frame. There we go. All right. I love it. So let's, just so you remember, because you don't remember, but I'm going to go to full screen and start with our raw file. That was the raw file we started with. This lovely little red locomotive. And we took this and converted it to that. How amazing is that? That is, to me, that is such cool stuff. And I actually have a wall just outside my office that I'm making into a train wall. It has some model trains hanging on it. And this is going to get hung up and go there as well. So, holy cow, it's almost 9 o'clock already. As you can see, if you look at my little thumbnails all the way down here, I've got more stuff waiting. So some of this stuff is going to get used in next week's deep dive class, which will be 2 hours of really fine detail kind of stuff. And then, what else? Let's go back to everything else here. We're not going to get to our dessert. Sorry, no dessert for you tonight. But I will share with you that if you're not a subscriber to Photography Kitchen, this is what we do. We have fun. Oh, but before I close up, Marlene, any other questions on that last thing?
The reality.
Hill, I don't see any hills. This is on Cape Cod. There's no real. I'll tell you what though. We'll make believe. All right, let's make believe here. All right. So actually, that's a cool one. Let's do that. M for the marquee tool, and I'm going to come across right into the engine. And the cool thing about all these tools over here is you don't have to just subtract one. So I'm in this mask. I'm going to subtract the sky because I don't want to affect the sky for argument's sake. I also don't want the bottom of this. So I can also subtract another linear gradient. So I click on that and say, all right, I want to subtract that. And then I could say, oh, let's see. Also, I got some of the engine in it. So the last thing I'm going to do is subtract the subject. And look at that. That is really cool. So now I just got that area. And I could decide, I'll take the contrast out. That'll flatten it out a bit. And take out the saturation, which will make it less apparent. But that's the kind of way you can do those things. And you can also just use the brush. Like I think the ballast around these tracks is a little too yellow. So I'm going, as long as I'm here, let me show you another cool tool. If I have the brush and I click in one place, now this track's basically a straight line, and I've got auto mask on. So I click here, just click once, hold down the shift key, come all the way over to here, and click one more time, and it draws a straight line in between the two. And I can add to that. I can then click here, hold down the shift key, and click there. I got a little bit of the front of the train, so hold down the alt key, and it turns into a minus. I'm actually going to subtract that as well. And now I can make that grayer and make it a little darker while we're at it. Did that kind of answer your question? You can do, when you see something you feel that needs editing, the Lightroom masking capabilities and the ability to create selections like you just saw are ridiculous with what you can do. They are so powerful that and this is all new in the past year. Also, as I look at this, I want to see if this is completely straight. So I'm going to hit the R key, and it looks like it might be very slightly off. Let's see. Yeah, it was. You see, I'm looking at the left side of the front of the engine. I want to get one of the crop lines right up against that. And look at that. With your eyeballs, you can see less than a degree of rotation being off. And now it looks straighter. I hope that answered your question. But if you want to see more, if you like this kind of stuff and you want to see more of it, this is what we do in Photography Kitchen. And we do this twice a month.
Someone did ask about how to subscribe, and someone answered it by saying just go to your website, and it's called Photo Kitchen.
Yes, Photography Kitchen, or just go on my website, just joebradyphotography.com, and you can sign up for Photography Kitchen. You can try it for a month or 3 months or 6 months. Apparently, I just did something with Zoom to draw a pink line on my screen.
Someone did that in my class on Monday, and they couldn't figure out how to get
Yeah, I have no idea what just happened there. So that's going to...
I thought about the hills. He sent another chat.
Okay.
And he was asking about the highlights on the engine.
Oh, like in here?
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess he wanted to know maybe...
Can I... All right. Sure. Personally, I kind of like them, but let's do that. It's a good question. So let's get B for our brush again. Auto mask on, and we can just click. Don't drag, just click on those, and let's bring the highlights down. Et voila. That's all. How easy was that? But it's a good question. And again, that's why I love having this live with you guys, because you ask questions that I might not have thought of. Or I look at the image and I thought, did I need to do that? And actually, that suggestion, I wish I had you looking over my shoulder when I did this final edit, because you were right. You were absolutely right. That bringing down those highlights allowed you to see the name of the train line. So kudos. Thank you for that. Anything else?
You got a lot of accolades.
Okay. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I hope to see more of you. Again, if you look in, let's see, Monday... I'll put it in Monday Morning Coffee. I'll put another link in about Photography Kitchen in there. But if you...
Actually, Diane put something in there
Oh, actually, that's right. She's home.
Yep. Diane, hello. I took over your job
Yeah,
tonight.
she had an event she was doing out, and I did hear her car pull up, but apparently she went up. Her office is on the upstairs floor. She didn't want to come into the middle, so.
I'm upstairs. I didn't want to interrupt.
Hi.
Yes, and Marlene, you can have this job anytime you like. You did an excellent job. Thank you.
Well, that's if Joe approves.
Oh, you were a delight, as you always are, Marlene.
Thank you.
Not that my wife is replaceable in any
She is absolutely not.
bit at all. Okay, so any other questions? Those questions were great. By the way, if you think of something after the fact that like, oh crap, I wanted to ask that, send me an email. joebrady1@mac.com, mac.com. If you, and everybody on my workshops knows this, if you never want to hear from me again, send me a text. Because I don't text. I hate it. Send me an email. If you're desperate, you can call me. But don't send me a text.
Also, someone wanted to know about whether it was being taped because they came in late.
Yes, if you arrived late, and somebody else just drew out on my screen again. Robert, is that you? It looks like something you would do. I got to find where in Zoom that is and turn it off. Anyway, yes, this is being recorded. And give me a day or so. I just need to edit it down a little bit and put some title screens front and back. But I will post this. Everybody who joined us tonight, actually, it didn't ask for your email. I'll tell you why. Since this was a public one, everybody's going to get to see it. I will put it in the newsletter for everybody as soon. So for your Monday morning coffee, if I can't get it for Friday, Monday morning coffee, I will put the recording along with the links to both YouTube and Dropbox, as well as a link to the image we used. So you can bring them back into Photoshop and deconstruct the layers. And you'll see all the masks and everything else we did in Lightroom. Anything else? Is that about it? All right, I'll say that is. I thank you so much for joining us. It was great to see such a nice crowd out here tonight, and I hope to see more of you on upcoming photography kitchens. And again, the next one is right here, February 18th, the same time, 7:30 p.m. And we typically run as it is right now. Yeah, it's 8:59. So our hour programs always run a little long because we have fun, and I love your questions. They are very helpful. Like the question about bringing down the highlights on the side of the locomotive. Great catch. So thank you for that. I'm going to keep that edit in my final image to be printed. Yes.
In addition to that, bringing the highlights down, could you use the reflection removal tool?
Oh, that's iffy.
That's an awful tool.
Yeah, I've had really mixed results with that tool. Because I don't see anything actually reflecting in it. I just see highlights. It's the kind of thing you could try, but man, I'm not a huge fan of the reflection removal tool. If you're actually shooting through a window and there's something behind the window, sometimes it works okay. Or if you're shooting through a window and there's something reflecting on it that's destructing your background, maybe. But for something like that, I really don't think it would work. I actually personally, I think this result is perfect. I love it. You got the reflections. You can see a little bit of rippling on the side of the engine, but you can see it's mass coastal. And yeah, if there's any train people in here, by the way, that's a GP9.
Joe, someone asked a few times, I'm sorry I missed it.
Not at all.
About virtual copies. I guess maybe you can make a virtual copy?
Yes, virtual copy is one of the greatest things in Lightroom. And it's very simple. You can come up to photo and it says create virtual copy. But command apostrophe, or on a Windows machine, control apostrophe. And its greatest help that I feel is when you're looking at final crops. So we added our vignette, and if I decide I wanted to see what it looks like to fit in the frame. So I'll make one virtual copy of this, just command apostrophe. And it really is a virtual copy. It's just a copy of the thumbnail. That's all it is. I have this virtual copy. I can then come up to the cropping and choose a frame that looks closest Probably a 4x6 shape on that. Yeah, that was pretty good. And I can then move around the crop however I want. Maybe a little bit more to the right like that. And now I have the same shot cropped slightly differently. But again, notice that when I hide the vignette, it's still there. That's the beauty of the post-crop vignette, because as you crop, it follows. So when you want to test out different kinds of crops, the virtual copies are just the greatest. And again, this is, I could spend weeks going over everything just in Lightroom and 6 months going over Photoshop. So we can't do all of what the programs can do in an hour and a half. That's what we build on through the Photography Kitchen stuff. We try to cover everything, just not in one night, because there's no way you're going to remember it all. Anything else you missed?
Joe,
Yeah.
not to be a nag, but going back to what else mentioned about the specular highlight on the side of the engine where it says Mass Coastal, would you try to consider trying to, maybe with a brush, painting in some dehaze into that area? Or do you think that would just cause more problems?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the tool so you can see it. I'm kind of automatically going to say no, but here's why. Let's look at this composition-wise. For people that are into trains, that whole Mass Coastal thing is important. And it's by having the highlight around it, it becomes a focal point that the eye goes to. And if I bring it down to look like the rest, then the entire engine is going to become the subject. And without a necessary focal point, in fact, if we try it, we may find that the focal point of the engine becomes the front of it. So that's a good test. Let's do that. I've got Auto Mask on. I'm going to bring this in. Let's just go ahead in here and see what happens if we bring down the highlights and dehaze this thing. Let's go to dehaze and darken it up some. Actually, dehaze doesn't really do anything to that. We have to just bring down the highlights more, maybe the whites, maybe darken the blacks. All right, so if we go ahead and do that, I could take it one step further. All right, remember that color mixer command that was in here? The point color? If we go to the point color, I could go pick this kind of black thing and bring the variance down to flatten it out. It's not going to do it. It's still too much. But anyway, so if we look at the before and after, there was the before, there's the after. However, now the entire engine is the focal point. Where when you look at it here, you have this as the focal point. This is where your eye goes. So at that point, it just becomes a creative decision. One is not right or wrong. By doing what you asked, it does make the engine more uniform. But now there isn't necessarily a landing place. Maybe the numbers up here, where if you did this, you have a landing place. So you're not wrong. It's just you as the creator, as the person creating this bit of artwork, that's a decision you make. But do understand those small points about focal point. Now, conversely, I could go the other way and pick up the bottom here. Excuse me, let me hit K again. I'm going to pick up the bottom here. Oops, let me get out of here. K. All right. Let's pick up underneath and above
Just the reds.
and bring those down and leave the other stuff up. Do I like that better? I don't think so. I think that I'll admit, no, that's the first one before we did it. But look at the difference between there and there. Yeah, you lose the focal point. Again, by doing that, it makes the entire engine equal in power.
Fair point.
But where here you've got that visual focal point. And we could go, but that's a great comment, and that's why I love having the live part of this, because you guys bring up concepts like that, and that's important. Yes.
Now, I need to get back to something that Kathy raised about virtual copies.
Yes.
She's really wanted to know, can you export that? Does it show the edit history?
Does it show the edit history? Not in the export, but if you go over to the left panel to history, there's everything we've done.
That was one of the virtual copies.
Yes, and they're going to be different on each one.
Show,
So see, as I look at the virtual,
edit history, can you export the virtual copy?
yeah,
Okay.
because understand that when you edit in Lightroom, you're not actually doing anything. You're not actually doing an edit. You are telling Lightroom when you finally export, take all of these things we did. Like here's the history. This is all the things we did to that file. Look at all that. That's everything we did. When you export it, it will then take all of these operations and build it into the image, because these are raw files and you actually can't edit a raw file. It has to be converted into something else. So when we do a virtual copy, it's creating a thumbnail for us to play with. We then move all these sliders around and make masks, etc., etc. But you could come back 20 years from now and turn them off because they're not actually being done. Where they end up getting built into the file is when you send it into Photoshop or you export it as a JPEG for online or a TIFF for printing. When you export, the software creates a new file. It creates a bitmap that's going to be generally a TIFF as a default out of Lightroom. You still have your raw file with its history. You could always go back and change one of those things. But when you make these virtual copies, they are each considered their own operations. So if you wanted to export that and export that and export that, they'll create 3 separate files for you as you do it. But the beauty of the virtual copy is it's happening virtually. It's not actually creating a file until you export it. All right. Well, I thank you so much again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a good time. And I hope to see you guys online again soon. Again, check out the newsletter. All the new stuff that's going on will show up there. So what's coming next week is the deep dive. If you really want to get deep into Photoshop, Lightroom, and some of the Nik tools for really adding clarity to your image, really finishing it off, that's going to be a special class next week. But then the following week, we'll be back to Photography Kitchen. And from now to the end of the year, we'll average 2 a month, occasionally 3. So that's it for me. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you online again soon. Till next time, be well.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.